I feel like everyone and their mothers have made videos about this man lately for obvious reasons. You know, he's finally back. And actually, if you think about the arc of this channel, I think 3 of my top 10 most viewed videos I've made have actually involved clapping this man's cheeks. So I'm kind of ready to plunder more water from that murky well again. It's been very successful for me on here, and I'm pretty shameless. I don't give a fuck. Now, I think it's kind of fair to say that Johnny Boy's reputation has taken a little bit of a nosedive of late, which is bizarre considering that this is a man that has scrapped with a lovable fatso at a press conference. He got arrested for a felony hit and run charge involving fleeing the scene and hitting a pregnant woman, coming back to grab his money and ID before, you know, skipping off into the night. Well, that's how I assume it went down. He's tested positive for banned performance enhancers on numerous occasions. That's well documented. He's also tested positive for banned recreational cocaine use. He's had an entire card cancelled because he's too much of a pussy to fight a journeyman half his size on short notice. He had a card moved at the last minute to another venue. Not necessarily his fault, but the direct result of his cheating, scumbaggy ways. He hid under a ring all day to avoid getting tested. He threatened a test official when she came to test him at the inconvenient time of 4 p.m. at his home. Didn't get banned for not turning up to that drug test, I'll also add. He's had multiple DUI and sexual assault charges.
Did you have anything to drink before you were driving?
Yeah, earlier I did.
A drink of what?
Vodka.
And in a move that sums up his entire career, the night that he's inducted into the Hall of Fame, he beats the shit out of his wife in front of his 2 young daughters.
This chicken is cold.
Have I missed anything? And bear in mind, these are the things that we know about that, you know, imagine the things that we don't know about that will come out sooner or later. And the weird thing, as I've said, is that for some reason, the thing that's really riled up the fan base and really made them turn against him collectively is that he's now refusing to fight a man who has pretty much wiped out the entire top 10. We will get into that. Has Jon Jones finally ruined his legacy beyond repair?
Yeah, I think this is that, you know, beyond the octagon situation where what a fighter does, you know, outside of the UFC directly impacts their career. I don't know, he's got like an OJ situation in his hands, you know? So it's kind of hard where you're like...
He makes OJ look like a fucking Boy Scout.
I don't know, it's kind of like...
Let's not do OJ dirty now, all right? By comparing him to...
Hey, with all due respect, that murderer ran for over 11,000 yards.
He's one of the smartest fighters, I think, in the UFC, like in terms of like his fight IQ. So it is really hard to look outside that perspective. But I would say, yeah, he probably did fuck shit up for himself with his extracurricular activities.
What do you reckon, Jax?
I would say not any worse than it was. Like, he already had a floor of where his greatness is, and like if you compare him to other great people in other sports, you know, like the Muhammad Ali's, LeBron James, like you can see them as people, and you pair that with their excellence in whatever sport they had, or you know, in LeBron's cases, it's still going. For Jon, what he does inside the cage is extraordinary. It's amazing, and he's the best to have done those things inside the cage. But he's a terrible human. He's a terrible human. He's very bad at life. I think that people try to hold him to the standard of how he is inside the cage, and he can't live up to it. He has tried to put on the facade of being this or being that. The person that we're seeing, they kind of really is him. I feel like that doesn't take away from what he's done in the cage. Now, mind you, the steroids and all that stuff, that has to be taken into account. Even with that, I still have him as the greatest of all time. Him not fighting Tom is going to be something that's going to be remembered, but it won't delete everything that happened before it. but it'll definitely be remembered, and it'll be a lasting impression if this is the last time we see him.
I think what was very interesting about the Jon Jones case is it didn't really seem to matter what he did outside of the cages, because I think all of us as fans, we all have moments, well, not just fans, but as people, we're all realistic in the fact that we all have, I don't want to say we've all got skeletons in our closet or we've got, but none of us are perfect. And we've all made mistakes in our lives, and we can kind of understand how that can happen. So I don't feel like any of those things damaged Jones's reputation as a fighter beyond repair, because it's like, well, he might have done this outside the cage, but then he went in there and got it done in a high IQ fashion. And even with things like the Dominic Reyes one, you can make a very strong argument that he lost that fight, but Jon Jones isn't responsible for how the judges saw that fight. He got the win at the end of the day. He's shown a very high IQ in there, and that, as you said, can never be taken away from him. But the reason why I think this Tom thing is so huge is because the way he's handled the whole thing has been an embarrassment. He could have taken the high road and just been said, look, Tom Aspinall's a great fighter. He's worthy of being at the top. And he could have just been very candid and said, look, I'm at the back end of my career now. It's been a long-standing goal of mine to fight Stipe and to fuck over Cormier one more time. You know, that is an element of it as well. And I think that while most people would have been annoyed by that, we would have accepted it. Exactly. We would have just said, you know what? Fine. He wants to fight Stipe. He's admitting that he's at the twilight of his career and he's leaving with grace. But then to come out more recently and then to discredit Tom's validity as someone worth fighting.
I've just been here too long to get all excited about someone who's hot today. I'm here for legacy. I've been gambling for way too long to just take random fights.
I looked into this. No other fighter, no other current active fighter has done what Tom Aspinall has done in any division, knocking out 5 of the top 10 and in a round, and to have an interim title and to defend it before you've even come back, and to act like seriously like this guy is not worthy of being in a main event with you or to defend against is a disgrace. And obviously piling on by saying, oh, I'll fight Alex, by the way, when we can all see that there's very clear holes that you can exploit in Alex Pereira's game. It just makes him look like a massive pussy. And like, I also have to add that I don't think Dana's really helped with it as well. You know, when an organization is constantly like trying to prop a guy up and force a narrative on us, it makes us angry. It's like they're forcing us and telling us that he's the guy, he's the one, and it's forcing the opposite narrative to come into effect now because people are acting out against that. So I think that's part of it. I think the only way that Jon Jones can reverse this now and to get his legacy back on track is to fight Tom Aspinall, because we know that Jon Jones is a very sensitive little chap and that the internet never forgets. And as soon as he retires, if he doesn't fight Tom Aspinall, he is going to be trolled relentlessly for as long as Tom keeps winning. The only way he's going to be let off the hook is when Tom eventually loses, and then he can say, see, he was never that good. In terms of legacy, the only thing that matters to Jon Jones is not just being seen as great, being seen as the greatest. And that is constantly going to be thrown in his face. So kind of to wrap this up, what do you think actually happens from with Jon Jones moving forward? Like, how do you think the fight plays out, and what do you think he goes on and does?
I think Jon Jones wins the fight. I think he finds a way to not allow Stipe to get anything significant off. Stipe, I think Stipe will have slowed down a little bit. Shoot, have y'all seen him walking? He's riding a horse. Like, it's crazy. But like, I think he wins this fight.
Putting on an act.
I don't know. But I think he wins this fight. I don't know if he gets a finish or not. But I think he wins comfortably. And I think that he leaves. I think that him fighting Alex is a better business decision. Alex is a bigger star than Tom is. But it's not going to do anything for your legacy to beat Alex, because there's so many handicaps that Alex has going into that fight. If he's fighting for legacy, then he has to fight Tom. But what I think is going to happen is he's going to leave and he's going to wait till things shake out. I don't think that he sees the value in fighting Tom. I only think he sees the what can happen terribly for him, which is a very real situation. He can definitely lose that fight.
I think when you asked the question, I didn't really consider the more recent things that he said, and whether or not he was, avoiding a fight between, him and Tommy. But I really don't have a problem with him not fighting Tom. The overall consensus is that the fans do, and I agree that the only thing he could do to win them back over is to fight Tom. I don't have a problem with what he said, because it could just be a way of building up that fight, because Tom isn't a star. Like, Hello, Jon is only going to get you so far in terms of fan recognition. Like, yes, he's knocked out back-to-back like top 10 contenders, but whether people want to admit it or not, they care about a fighter being a superstar. And I think this could just be a different way of Jon building it up. Could not be. He could quite literally be ducking the fuck out of him because he knows that he could very well lose that fight. Overall, though, I just I'll probably, err on the side of him trying to build it up.
I mean, I'm kind of erring on the side that I think whatever happens, I think there's no chance that he fights Tom Aspinall. I think he's already made that clear. And I think in terms of what happens to him after the Stipe fight is very much going to be determined by the nature in which he beats Stipe. I think it's going to come down to, I think like if he destroys Stipe, for example, in really easy fashion, I think it reaffirms to himself of, oh, I'm still good enough to do this. And I think we get himself and Alex Pereira at heavyweight, probably at the midpoint of next year. I think it gets stalled out a little bit. There's a reason they gave Alex Pereira Roundtree and not Ankalaev. They're clearly setting him up for either Tom or Jones, one way or another. And the way that things have panned out, I'm starting to think that it might be them laying him up for Jones, because you'd assume that Jones has got the ear of Dana probably more than anybody else, the way that he's been glazing him the last year and a half. Whatever happens in this scenario, I feel like Tom Aspinall's going to get fucked over. So Tom's going to lose his belt one way or another, and he's not going to get that Jones fight. Now, if Jones has a tough fight with Stipe that goes 5 rounds and he barely escapes with another win on his records, I don't think he's going to retire on the spot because he's a cunt. I think what he's going to do is he'll say, oh, I'm going to have to think about it, blah, blah, blah. And then he'll drag it out for ages, because we know that Jon Jones can be a very spiteful person. And I think everything that's gone on with Tom Aspinall, he's going to look to spite him as well. Tom Aspinall's been the bane of his existence at this point, in terms of he's going to be the dark stain on his legacy that he doesn't want to deal with. So I think if he has a very tough fight with Stipe, he doesn't necessarily retire on the spot, but it will be the last time he fights. But he'll just gaslight people into believing that he will come back, and then he won't. Because in part of his mind, he'll be like, I just had a tough fight with old man Stipe. Alex then becomes a much tougher proposition, and he's not going to want Tom after that. But then he's going to want to have that aura of still being the champion for a little while. So he'll cling on to it for as long as he can until they strip his ass. And then if we get the very unlikely scenario, the one that I'm still hoping happens, where Stipe somehow beats him, I think that's the only situation where we potentially get Jon Jones fighting again. Because if he loses to Stipe, he can't go out on a loss, and then he'll campaign for that rematch with Stipe. And that's probably that. I think that's the only chance we get. So if we get Jones starches Stipe in easy fashion, I think we get him fighting Pereira midpoint next year. If he loses to Stipe, we get that rematch. But I don't see any scenario where he nuts up and fights Tom Aspinall. He's a scumbag. He's got a personal vendetta against Tom Aspinall now, and I think he's going to see to it that he delays it for as long as possible, the prospect of Tom Aspinall being officially the undisputed champion, and I think that's where it's going to end up, sadly.
I made a video almost exactly a year ago and said nobody wants to fight Tom Aspinall, and it still holds true. Nobody wants to fight that man, including the greatest of all time.